Hey guys, this is Grant, and this is the second installment of Three Good Questions. And today I'm really excited because I got three of my good friends that are right at really the front of things that are going on as far as streaming and churches right now. Three, in my mind, top-notch worship leaders. I've got Steve, if you will. Steve, say hi.
Hello, good to see everybody.
Yep. And then I have Brishan Hatcher.
Good morning or afternoon, whatever time this is.
Yeah.
I've lost all. I don't even know when it is.
How different is that from normal? How different is that from normal, Brishan?
Well, that's about right.
Yeah. And then finally, we got Jeremy Swindle.
Hey, how are y'all doing this morning?
Yeah. Well, look, thank you guys for doing this with me. What I'm going to do is give each of you just a few moments to introduce yourself a little bit more and talk about where you worship and a little bit of your background and some personal stuff. So if you're ready, Steve, we'll start with you.
Sure. My name is Steve Maxwell. I am married to Alicia Tillman Maxwell. We've got just almost 20 years being married. We've got three boys, Jonah, Judah, and Josiah. What is that? 15, 11, and 10, I think, or something like that. Actually 15, 12, and about to be 11. Worship at North Atlanta Church of Christ, worship minister here. Just celebrated 5 years of being here, which has been a blessing. For our purposes here, though, it's been sad because there's at least two people on this screen that is taking me away from that I got to see on a lot more regular basis. But such is life. But it's been a blessing. It has been a blessing. I've been working with churches, I guess, on and off for almost 30 years, and so worship leading is a passion and something I enjoy doing, and especially with what it's taught me during this time now. So
Yeah. Well, and real quick since you touched on it, Steve, before we go on to Brishan, touch just a second on how you three guys know each other.
So it's funny, as I was preparing for this and I was writing it down, it's different. It's different to see it in writing, man. That gets scary, right? So Brishan, it may be slightly just because of the way things go. I met first out of all you guys when he was touring with AVB, and this is back before I was in Acappella. So this is when I was in Freedom, and so you're talking about 1992, 93. Yeah. I mean, you talking about way back then. I don't even want to count them years up, but that's been way back there. Yeah. Then in 2000, I got to hang out with Jeremy and the other guys that were in AVB at the time, and his beautiful wife and family. And since then, at least with those guys, we've just kind of done life on and off together. And I mean, their families are family to me. I mean, all the way from, we talking about, I mean, like Jeremy's siblings, and I mean, like, and Brishan's grandmother and aunts and uncles. I mean, I know we're like families. Our families are connected big time, and so at least 20 years, and in some cases even longer. And then I forget, Grant, when I first met you, but I've been in relationship with that church for that same amount of time, almost 30 something years with Senatobia and different families there. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. All right, Brishan, what about you? Give us a little more background.
My name's Brishan Hatcher, and I have been here. Let's see. I'm married to Jill. Have two awesome kids. Thankful for them. And this, we were talking a little bit about it before we started recording, just talking about trying to take advantage of the time we have with our family right now, because we'll all kind of want this back when we get, overwhelmingly busy again in the future. But two great kids, a boy and a girl. Georgia, it's my daughter. Dagan is my son, and I'm really thankful for them, and I see Jesus in them in some big ways. But I am here in Memphis, Tennessee, at Highland Church of Christ. We are Highland, let's see, East, right? Yeah, because then
Yeah.
you have Highland West, which is weird because they're not really that far west, but Highland East and West. And I've been here for 11 years. I think I said that. I'm so thankful to be
Wow.
with this body here. And it's crazy. Never been anywhere that long before, but love Memphis. It's a great city to do ministry. A lot like everywhere else, but Memphis has some very specific challenges that allow us to pour our heart into those situations and those opportunities and really watch God thrive in those situations. So, but love being a worship minister here and whatever other hats they give me depending upon that day, just like I'm sure those guys too.
Yeah.
And you as well, Grant. But main thing here is just being able to lead others in worship and design and create and facilitate worship experiences. And it's I never dreamed I'd get to do this and take care of my family. So it's wonderful.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Brishan.
Yeah. And and what people don't know is that we're all three brothers, me and Steve and Jeremy. You can tell we all look alike. Sadly, we all, we're, really, we are. We're all three.
Twins, right? Twins.
That's right. We're all twins. We're triplets.
Triplets with three.
They're like, no.
Yeah, y'all can't see them. They're giving me this sign in the background. All right, Jeremy, tell us a little bit more about you.
I'm Jeremy Swindle. I live in Montgomery, Alabama. I'm married to Jessica. We've been married for a little over 20 years, and got two boys, Dylan and Bryant. Dylan is 16 and Bryant is 13. And they're just fun and crazy guys. Jessica is a middle school teacher at their school. And so this is a really interesting time in our house where she's having to teach and continue to do her job of teaching, but also kind of make sure the boys do their thing in school. I've been at Landmark for about 3.5 years now and leading worship here. And it's just been a great fit for our family. Montgomery has just fit us really well. And it's just a blessing to be here. And we're really thankful for that. And just the honor to work with the people I get to work with and do what I get to do. It's just been a lot of fun. And knowing Brishan and Steve for as long as I have, my wife's, one of her best friends is Brishan's sister. And, and so we just go way back with Steve and Alicia and Brishan, his whole family. When I lived in Paris, and I was in AVB, and I'd lived in Paris, Tennessee, where Acappella and AVB was from, and I'd go to Walmart,
that's an important distinction, Paris.
There's a big, huge difference between the two. But I would be out and about, and people would find out that I was an AVB, and the very first thing they would say do you know Brishan Hatcher? Brishan was a celebrity in Paris, Tennessee, man. They knew him, they loved him. And but these two guys, man, they've just been such a blessing to me and my family for a long time. And honestly, Senatobia Church of Christ has been a blessing to us too. Yeah. That's the first place that me and Jessica went to church when we got married. So after we got married, that's the first place we ever went to church, and so just that, on a Sunday night, I think it was. So yeah, man.
Well,
so
I think too, if I can tell this, and I can edit it out if you don't want it, but you're probably still the only couple in the history of Senatobia that's ever had their honeymoon in Senatobia, Mississippi.
That's funny. We got married in December, and I had to go back to Paris for AVB was supposed to fly out to, I think it was Colorado for some group of concerts, that we were going to be doing out there. And Jessica had finals at Murray State University. And so we had very little time. And so we ended up honeymooning, doing our honeymoon in Senatobia at a bed and breakfast. Yep, that was our honeymoon, man. 3 days. So
yeah. We need to somehow let the Department of Commerce know that so they can advertise it as a honeymoon destination.
That's right, man. That is right.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I like it because I know you guys and you know each other. And I think that I've known you long enough to know all of your heart. And so I think that what's going to come is going to be really good for us because it's not just going to be technical. I think that you guys are all people that really love God and love worship on that level, not just because you love to perform and you love to sing, but because you love offering that back to God. So with that said, I got 3 questions that I'm going to ask you. We're going to start with question number 1. As a worship leader, what are some surprising benefits that you've noticed from this time that we've been physically apart? So I'll start with Steve. Steve, how would you answer that question?
If I can quickly say, I think to kind of lead into that, as I was considering this question, I remember just because of my schedule here at North Atlanta, we've got 2 services that we produce each week. And so on Wednesdays and Thursdays, that was my normal schedule before all this hit. I just would go into work 10, sometimes even 11 o'clock, because I was going to be at the building till 9, sometimes 10 o'clock that evening. Yeah. So Thursday, March 12th, I mean, I'm not going to forget it. For a while, I went in right before 11 o'clock and just kind of saw a bunch of people milling around our conference room and walked in, and our executive minister had sent an email out earlier that morning, but I just wasn't my practice to look at email before I went in and work like that. And so I didn't know this, but man, we were assembling a meeting, like a ministers wide meeting, and some support staff trying to figure out whether we were going to even come to church on the 15th. And so that kind of kicks this thing off. And so then on the 13th, we were scrambling to put together a service for the 15th. And then we had another meeting that next morning, which kind of led to some of the things we did now. And so, but what this, one of the surprising benefits, though, I said that to say this, has been watching God use people that have been here the entire time in ways you didn't know, or using talents from these people that you never saw. I mean, we've got, people that do communications and different people that do AV and different things like that. But this period of time has required different skills and different talents. And there are people that you do life with that we've been worshiping with every week who have these different skills, who just haven't had a need to use them for the church like we've had to during this time. And so that has been one of the things, of seeing the different talents of people come through. Another thing, and this is funny, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, a little bit differently, but another thing for me, I am not, and these other 2 guys, they know this about me already, I'm not a technology guy. So just full confession, when it comes to music, I love writing, I love, playing piano and all that kind of stuff. But outside of an acoustic piano, if it starts getting keyboardish and all that kind of stuff, I need somebody who's an engineer to come in and turn buttons. In my house, Alicia Maxwell is the technology queen. She's the one who hooks up. I mean, she had to help me get my Disney Plus on my own iPad. I'm the one with the iPad she had to give me. She don't even use Apple products. I say that to say, one of the things that I've learned is what the technology that I have had all along, just what it's actually capable of.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there are things that we've had for a long time, just because of how the world and culture has gone. There's different pieces to our lives, and technology is a big piece of that had, all this power I've had in my hand with this phone, and just not knowing how I could use it to join God in what he's been doing. And so that's been another thing, is doing that. The other thing is learning what it truly means. One of the benefits has been learning what it truly means to be together while being physically apart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So for the first time, we've been texting and maybe a FaceTime here and there. But yesterday I got set up a Zoom with my dad and my brother, you know what I mean? And his wife and all my nieces and nephews, and it was just amazing. You know, my dad, my amazing stepmom, Linda, and just all of us were together. Yeah. And so we were together. And let me tell you, man, we keep in contact, but we haven't been together. And those two things are different.
Yes.
And I think this time now is helping to teach the importance of what it means to be together, even though we are physically apart. Yeah. And then also, we have been able, and this is the last thing, we've been able to get a good look at just the rhythm of communication from our church.
Yeah.
Right. And so this time has really helped us to concentrate those communications efforts. And I could say more if you want me to, but it's helped us to concentrate those efforts and really help us. We've had as a goal as a church to make sure that we don't become siloed as ministry. You know, when you have a bunch of people who are really talented and gifted, and a church leadership that's amazing, especially like here at North Atlanta, they just let you go, which is fine. But each ministry and each minister can just go and then not have their ministries coordinate together for kingdom purposes. But we've had to do that now, right? Because you've moved everything, at least to us, for a digital format, and you don't want to overwhelm people or have too many things going on where it's not beneficial. And so that's been one of the benefits also.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that you pointed out that's going to be really important for churches moving forward, because me personally, I don't think this is ever going to go back to the way it was 100%. And so we've got to figure out how, more than just how we do a streaming service, because I think all of us can do that, but how can we connect with our folks? That connection is what we've got to be conscious of. And also, how can we equip people? Because there may be some people that say, you know what, I really like worshiping at home. And if what you guys have been saying is true, that it's just as legitimate worshiping at home as it would be if we're in the building, we may have to turn some people loose to continue that on some level, you know. So anyway, Brishan, what about you? Do you have anything to add?
Well, you hit on what I was thinking about. You know, people who may say, well, I like being right where I'm at. Well, I think one of the benefits from this time is we have learned how important proximity is. Mm. We've now know that we have taken that for granted because of this 6 feet or shelter at home. Keep your whole body at home. Now we're understanding how important proximity is, being close, being in the same room. Even, for introverts, extroverts, we're both understanding that people are missing the body. And I think that's a benefit, because what we once maybe took for granted, now we are seeing, oh my, this is what church is not just saying I'm a Christian, saying I'm a believer, but being present with other people who feel the same, of like mind, like heart. And I think, sadly, it's been a terrible way for us to learn these lessons that we're learning right now. But people are missing the body. People are understanding that proximity is of absolute importance. And although I think being at home, we can worship, but nothing will ever take place, will be the same as being able to look someone in the eyes and them see you back. Not like this, I'm looking at one of you, but you don't know what I'm looking at you, And so, man, I'm telling you, proximity is a wonderful and beautiful thing, being close. And I think we're learning that presence, is so important. So important.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think even for some of us that might be a little bit more introverted, like I made a joke a couple Sundays ago, I'm even starting to miss the people I don't like, It's been so long. Jeremy, what about you? You got anything to add?
Yeah, I think there have been several things, in thinking about what's been surprising and all of that during this process. I think, I've learned more technology than I did before, even though I don't oversee all of that technology stuff, just kind of trying to step up and help people here in that area, but I've learned more about technology and how live stream works. And I really think that's great. And I too believe that we're not going to go back to the way things were before, that you're going to see more people. I think at first there might be almost like an Easter Sunday type day where you've got the walls are going to explode. There's so many people in the room. But I think once that newness again kind of wears off, you'll see more people feeling comfortable staying at home because they spent 2 months doing that and watching church at home and all of that. But, I think one of the coolest things to me is that in this whole process, and I guess it shouldn't be surprising because it's just how God works, is that this has expanded or extended the message of Jesus, this whole thing, because now churches are forced to do things. We weren't live streaming before. We were talking about it and had been planning for a while. But because of other things that we felt like were on the table, a little bit more important at Landmark at the moment, we weren't really like, we can't invest the money in it right now to do it the way we want to do it. And so it was just on the table. So our director of technology had been working behind the scenes and for a little while to get ready for something like this. But I think the majority of churches online streaming was not something that they were even really venturing out and doing much at all. So what it's forced us to do is it's forced us, and forced sounds negative, but I think in this situation it's positive because it's forced us to do something, to be extra creative, to do something different than we have done before, to find new ways of sharing Jesus with people. And I think in this process, while church doors are closed on a Sunday morning, more people have access to the message of Jesus than any other time when you think about it. I mean, because so many people have around the world access to the internet and can get online and to watch services and whatever taste in church you have, whatever worship style, whatever, you can watch your favorite preachers. You can, we have people that used to live in Montgomery because they went to Faulkner or whatever. And, one family is watching from Canada because she went to school at Faulkner and loved Buddy, loved listening to Buddy preach. And so now she's watching from Canada and, and I think that's neat. I see people every week. I see people from my high school in Mississippi, and just people all over the place that, are watching this. And to me, that has been a big win for the church worldwide, what God's doing. So that's been it. So, but it's not surprising because that's just the way God works. He's going to take these things that a lot of times we feel are negative, and turn them into positives.
Yeah. Well, and we've noticed something similar at Senatobia, little Senatobia. We've got people watching from California and from Montana and Nebraska that have had they've had family or relationships here. And it's been a really interesting way for people to reconnect that hadn't been able to connect with us for a long time. And I agree. I think that's one of the advantages. But that kind of leads me into the next question, Jeremy, because you said that y'all had to come up on your streaming really quickly. We did the same thing at Senatobia. We'd been planning on streaming for a while, but we were looking at slowly kind of bringing it in over 6 or 7 months. And then all of a sudden, we went from putting an iPhone on the front pew, because when the first thing hit, that's all the technology that we had, to the next week, cameras and software, live stream software, subscription services to get these things up live. But that's the next question that I have for you guys. Y'all are blessed to be at bigger churches that can afford a worship minister on staff that has, I mean, maybe in your sound rooms, I don't think it would be a stretch to say hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment, from microphones to speakers to video equipment. And also, you guys are, and I know I'm going to show my bias here, I don't know of 3 worship ministers in the Church of Christ that I think are better. There might be some out there that might be as good, but for my money, you 3 guys are the best. And the cool thing is, like, y'all are also different as worship ministers, which is also really cool because you really lean into your own style really well. But what would you say to the people worshiping at home that have a volunteer worship minister that's working 9 to 5 the rest of the week, that's working on getting his songs together, doing the best he can, that doesn't have the money for the technology, and maybe they are just streaming from an iPhone? Like, what would you say to those churches? How can they worship at home? How can they encourage their worship minister that's doing the best he can with what he has? And we'll start with Brishan on this question.
Oh man. Well, when I read that question, the first, you know what, let me back up. By the way, I know I can speak for the 2 guys, man. Thank you for that encouragement, man.
Yeah.
We love to do what we do. And I know that I can speak for these guys again. We do not take this for granted. And man, to be able to do this is such a blessing.
Yeah.
And you have always been such an encouragement. And dude, that's priceless, man. It's so thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I know I can speak for those guys. Man, the first word that came to my mind, and I mean this with all my heart, and there's some reasons why, I'll tell you, is grace. Grace. And everybody's going to be like, well, I hear that all the time. Well, yes. It's because it's like the second or third most important word that we have learned as brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
But grace, give grace, because one of my favorite artists does a song, and it's called Comparison Kills. And for me, it's one thing I learned when Highland first moved out here east of town onto Houston Levee Road. Anybody's from here doesn't know that, but we are 1.5 miles from Life Church, who has thousands and thousands and thousands of members. 2 miles from Hope Church, which has thousands and thousands, 10, 12, maybe 50, I don't know how many. Yeah. And then there's multiple others that are, Highland, we are the little baby church, and people come to us to find community, even though to me, we're big. So, but comparison kills. When we look at others and we wish that, we wish we had something we did not. Okay. So give grace, number one, for those worship ministers who are putting themselves in front of whatever camera it might be. If it's an iPhone hooked up on, just something that's hooked to a table, heart and content. Heart is number one. Is this person is genuinely trying to do what they do it to the best of their ability, lead others into worship, the God of the universe. And then, what are they singing? What are they saying? Even quality, and we're talking right now, quality and professionalism, they're both important things. They're both great things, especially when you have the ability to honor God with those things, but they are not necessity. Like, they're not something you have to have in order to deliver a message of the kingdom of God. And so churches have to understand that if we don't have this certain level, it's okay. It's okay. What matters is heart and content, and stop comparing. I mean, that's one of the whole reasons that I have a very small digital platform, very little social media. Even now in this time, it has not forced me to get more. Because I've just had to find other ways to connect with people. But I feel like comparison just destroys our ability to consume anything good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
And
Amen.
so we have to give grace. We have to, number one, look at the heart of the person behind whatever camera might be. He's holding it in front of his face, and the content, what the word that someone is delivering, and allow the Lord to for you to receive that as if it is the best, most wonderful tasting steak you've ever had in your life before, even though it may be, old ground chuck. It doesn't matter. God can make it pleasing and pleasant and powerful to you if you'll give grace and you'll remember what's important, and that's heart and content. So sorry that was long, but that's what I thought.
That's really good. And I've noticed too, a preacher, the guy that I interned under, his name is Ron Edwards, all the way back in Jacksonville, North Carolina, Roosevelt Drive Church of Christ, where I did my internships. He told me a long time ago when some people complimented a sermon of mine, he said, this is something you need to learn early. Every preacher is someone's favorite preacher and someone's least favorite preacher. And I've kind of taken that to heart, and you notice that through the years. And I think that's even multiplied for song leaders. I think it's tougher on you guys. Are more of a lightning rod because everybody has a preference, and this is personal for everybody. Everybody has a worship style they like. They have songs they like. If they don't get to sing some of their songs, no one seems to attract that criticism quite like worship leaders, because they're right in the middle of something that's very personal for everybody. So I think that that's really good, and having grace. And what was the other thing that you said? Having grace and the comparison. Well, how did you phrase that?
Yeah, man, comparison kills.
Comparison
it kills our ability to absorb what we need to absorb into our hearts, into our minds.
Yeah.
Even what we hear. If we're thinking, I mean, with Easter, I'll go back really quick. With Easter, I watched multiple different services. Yeah. Some that what I call look like U2 church, because the haze and the fog and the 1,200 lights, which is awesome. And it looks great. And it probably sounds amazing. But I was actually watching one, and I could not feel any intimacy at all. Because it was a stage the size of FedEx Forum with 4 people.
Yeah. And
all I wanted to see was I was like, give me something that that you're communicating with one person in your church.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying his heart wasn't there, because I actually know the guy, and he's wonderful. But in that moment, I was like, man, I would take one guy and one camera, and he's looking at pouring his heart out, So, I mean, we can't compare. We have to listen for those things, the heart and the content and the message. So, yeah.
Awesome, man. That's great. Jeremy, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Bree is saying it just really resonates with me. I think the comparison is tough. This season is hard because, it's one thing to lead worship on a Sunday morning live in front of your church. It's another thing to watch that, whether you're pre-recording or whatever, but whether you're doing a live stream or pre-recording, you're seeing yourself. You're seeing your team, and so there's enough comparison going on already for a worship leader where the worship leader's seeing. And so this season's really hard as it is, because you're looking and saying every week, looking at what your church is doing, at least from my context, how can we do this better? We're already scrutinizing it enough. We're right down the street, just like Brishan's talking about these mega, we're maybe 3 miles away from the 3rd largest church in America. Church of the Highlands is massive and growing like crazy. And they just do top-notch stuff,
Yeah.
you know, and so it's easy to fall into that comparison. But I think ministers right now, worship leaders, preachers, they need encouragement during this time too, you know, because they are providing something. It's different. They're not seeing people face to face. They're not hearing people say, good job on a Sunday morning. They need that interaction with somebody to call them and text them and build them up, and not scrutinize what they're doing. Because, you know, while there is some good technology that's out there that's not super expensive that you can use, but, you know, if you've never done live stream before, you're probably not going to suddenly look like Church of the Highlands on a Sunday morning, or, you know, or some mega church that, you know, like for Highlands, Church of the Highlands, you know, they didn't miss a beat in this whole process. They've been doing this stuff for years, and it's just great quality. And so while we're trying to catch up and do all this stuff, you know, the thing I love about a place like Church of the Highlands is they were offering, you know, help to churches during this process, saying, hey, we will, if you need a space to record your sermons on a Sunday, let us know and we'll help you. So, you know, that the people that were doing this great quality stuff, you know, has been, that they were willing to help other churches. But I think Brishan's really hitting it right. You know, don't compare. There's a million church services out there that you can watch every week. Yeah. It's easy to pick them apart. But I think for worship leaders that are just part-time, do your thing, you know, lead, bring your heart, and just pour your heart out to God, you know, and do the best you can with what God has given you. God has given you what you need for right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And, you know, I didn't even think about it with you guys because, you know, sometimes we don't like to think about this, but in the churches of Christ, we're a relatively small pond. Right. And I don't think that even you guys at bigger churches within our fellowship with bigger budgets, still people can tune in to Phil Wickham or Chris Tomlin, you know, or Montel Jordan right down from Steve Maxwell in Atlanta. So even you guys, our fellowship, I mean, there are people with global appeal, you know, across denominations and across Christendom. So that comparison thing can really take us about as far as we want to go with it. Steve, anything that you want to add?
Sure. And I'm going to just to kind of, just because of how you're doing this, I'm going to take us back to your question, which is an awesome question. Okay. So what is important for worshipers at home? Just the first part of that.
Yeah.
Remember that because of this epidemic, the people you're unable to be with are the people you would be with every Sunday at church in town where you live. Think about what I just said. Yeah. So what's important for the worshiper at home? And I know this is in reference to the worship leader, but I just want to remind people that the people one of the things as a worshiper at home, right? And Brishan said this earlier, we are now being reminded of just how easily it is to take for granted the fact that we were able to be together, right? Yeah. So part for the worshiper, remember that now your experience, part of what your experience is lacking, for lack of a better word to say it, is that you're unable to be with people that you would be with every Sunday. 1 Timothy 2:5-6, right, says, for there's one God, one mediator who can reconcile God and humanity, the man Christ Jesus. He gave his life to purchase freedom for everyone. This is the message God gave to the world at just the right time. And so I think for the worshiper at home, remember that message. Okay. it's important for the worshiper at home to remember God, especially now, right?
Yeah.
Remember, and it's awesome that we get to do this with you, Grant, right after Easter. But remember what God did and the part His Son played.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, right? And then also for the worshiper at home, we need to remember God's Spirit in us. Okay, and remember, don't forget. And I think this is one of the things, and Jeremy kind of touched on this, that this pandemic is helping us is remember our own condition. Remember where we were and when God found us, when He came to us. That's Romans 5, 1 through 11, if you want to take a look at that on your own time. Yeah. Remember, okay? And so to that extent, we are all worshipers. So remember, you're a worship leader. He's a worshiper also. But the worship leader is Christ.
Yeah.
The invitation to worship comes from God. And I think it's difficult in American culture because we're so used to going to church. Yeah. And we've done a great job, you know. And so that takes us right down the road that Brishan said we should spin around a 180 and walk backwards or get off that road. And he's right, and that's comparison. Right? There's one God who's doing, and this, it helps us to see God better. The way you should see it is for the worship minister who is at home with a songbook and his iPhone set up, and he's leading songs by himself for his church on a live stream. Think about that. And that's why people are not understanding that. It's not like he's maybe recording it to put up on Facebook or on YouTube. Maybe he sets a watch party and he's gonna get up and he's gonna lead the singing, you know what I mean? Like that. What you should see is just how amazing God is to work through that man or woman during that time for that purpose. Yeah. As well as you get on YouTube or you get on Facebook and you see a full production, you know what I mean? Type thing. What you should remember is not that your worship minister is horrible or I can't believe because as soon as you do that, then you're on that road Brishan talked about. You're comparing. You're comparing. So what's most important for our worshipers at home that are worshiping with a volunteer worship leader and without the technology, or what's important for the worshiper at home, period, is to remember what God is doing, and to the extent, and you do what you need to with this section, Grant. But you know, this would be a good time for you to hear these words: see what God is doing around the world. And many of us, even you know, a lot of us. That's one of the things I learned at traveling to Africa and traveling to Brazil and other places. Even when I was there, and people that maybe didn't have a steady place to live or things like that, they had a phone. I don't know why. That's, you know what I mean? It's funny, for as much as many people don't have. And guys, we are not in the majority world, right? The majority world is what most people call, you know, like third world, right? And so most folk are not like us. All four of us in this country. The rest of the world, the larger percentage of the world don't live like any of us. They are a lot poorer than all of us. And ironically, most of, or a good section of I should say a good piece of the world that's even considered living in poverty has the technology of a phone. Okay. So now with that being said, there are thousands of worship services. And so one of the things that the worshiper at home can do, and you can do this, nobody's watching you, right? I don't know, I'm trying not to be funny, thinking of our tribe of people, right? But nobody can watch you. Nobody will watch you get on your iPad and see what North Point is doing. Nobody will witness it. And so if you go to a Baptist service, right, and depending on who you are, Lord forbid, if you go check it out and see how God is working through someone else, No one will know.
Yeah.
But you and God, and he can bless you in that. So my encouragement for the worshiper at home is not to compare or think about the fact that your church doesn't have a full-time worship minister, or it does, or this, you've always wanted this or whatever, but just see what God is doing in the rest of the world through other churches. Okay. I'm going to, yeah. Now, the second part of this question, you want me to go ahead on and lead it? And that's a lot shorter answer, but I wanted to, we said, how can worshipers support their worship leader?
Yeah.
Okay. You can text, email, okay, set up a FaceTime, right? Set up if you have the ability, set up a Zoom meeting, text your worship leader. And I'm talking about even, I mean, at North Atlanta, we're right around 1,000, right? And in Atlanta, that's like a medium church.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just like these other guys in these other cities. We have congregations around here that have churches all over the world. And so you can say thank you. You can just send a text to your worship minister, to your preacher, and say thank you for allowing God to use you. And that will be an amazing blessing to them. And for many of us, you have the time, right? This is something I know I haven't gotten a chance to look at everybody's service here, but my guess is, I know Don and our church here, we're encouraging people to continually lift up first responders, right? So our doctors and our nurses and things like that. And so we're encouraging people to do that. And so take that same thing, man. Any doctor or nurse or person like that that you're communicating with, saying thank you for what you're doing, do the same thing for your church leaders.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the things, this is something that I think is important, and it kind of leads to the last question. So you guys feel free to push back. But I think that this is a great opportunity to see these others, to be blessed by other churches and what they're doing. And at the same time, stay connected with your local community church and what they're doing. So like if they've got a live stream, prioritize their live stream and spend the rest of your Sunday checking in and worshiping with everybody else, because all of these different churches, these are all, it's not like you just got that one opportunity. I know people that are listening to 4 or 5 sermons a day, worshiping with 4 or 5, 6 different worship leaders a day. So just because those other ones are out there doesn't mean that you have to disconnect from your family, your church family. That's still, in my mind, got to remain first priority.
Not only that, but
go ahead, Steve.
No, not only that, but that help balance that, right? Balance these other worship services through YouTube and Facebook. When somebody does Facebook Live, or what is it? Facebook? Is that what it is?
Yeah, Facebook Live. Yeah.
You can watch it later. You can go back, right? You can go back and watch it later. So balance your Netflix, your Amazon Prime, right? And your Apple Plus through Monday through Saturday. Balance some of that out with some of these other worship services, because they're just sitting there. They're sitting on YouTube for you to be able to do that. But absolutely, I do that. And Jeremy was mentioned Church of the Highlands, and I know we're doing this too. And these other guys, I think I can speak for them also. For those people that are watching this, if you know somebody and they need some help, for what we do at North Atlanta, our communications team, our AV team has helped several other people or trying. You know what I mean? When people need things, they text, "Hey, you guys did this. How do you do this?" Or that type of thing in relationships. This is a time for the church, again, to be together. Without physically being together. And one of the things that you can do is, if you know somebody who's doing something like this, reach out to us. I mean, for anybody watching this, I absolutely would say reach out to any of the 3 of us. You know what I mean? If you see our church is doing something that you think might be helpful or you'd like to do, man, reach out to us. We'd be glad to try. And I'll leave that to you, Grant, to put our information out there however you want to.
Okay.
But we'd be glad. We're the church. We're all the church.
Yeah. And
so this is an opportunity for us to be God in the world, be the church, and that's a beautiful thing for our world, especially right now.
I want to jump into, because one of the things that's helped me even before this, because like I was saying, it's easy to fall into that trap. I think remembering that the Spirit of the Lord resides over all these campuses, and that kind of goes with what Steve's saying. That we are all the church. People, it just looks different at every place, but the Spirit of the Lord resides over all these campuses, all over, and He's doing big things. It just looks different at every place, though. He's doing big things.
Yeah. Well, and that leads into the last question really well. A lot of us are missing each other. We're missing assembly. This is really, really different. But there, as we mentioned earlier, there have been some hidden gifts that have also kind of floated to the top. But for our folks at home that are at home week from week, they're not here in the general congregation. They're not in the church building, hearing people sing. What can people do from home to bring the most to their worship experience? And Jeremy, we'll start with you on this one.
I don't know. That's a different question. In the fact, that I just know what we do.
Yeah.
Here. We pre-record our services, so I'm able to be at home on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Which has been incredibly unique, different, but really cool at the same time, because I'm usually up by 5:45 on Sunday morning and going in for early morning rehearsals and sound checks and all that kind of stuff. And so this has been really cool for our family, and it'll the only time maybe that this will ever happen, being at home. But I would say how we have approached this. I've tried to approach this just like I would any other Sunday. I've tried to approach this, that's what I would tell people is approach it like you would any other Sunday. Don't do things different. Don't look at your live stream on your TV like you're watching a movie. Don't have posture like you're watching a movie, because you're not. So what we've tried to do, and we've tried to refine it every week here in our home of what we do. And this past Sunday, I felt like was the best. We actually, we do a weekly Bible study as a family, just one time a week. And so we've moved that. We usually try to do it one night during the week that we're all at home during our dinner time. So we've moved that to Sunday morning right now. And so we actually do Bible study at 9:00, an hour before, just the four of us. And so this last Sunday, me and Jessica got up and we made breakfast, and then we woke the kids up and breakfast was ready to go. And so we got to the table and sat and had breakfast and did our Bible study at 9:00. And it lasted about 45 or 50 minutes. But our stream started at 10:00. Well, we approached it the same way. We stand during our music at Landmark for the most part. So, man, all four of us, we stood up and just trying to, how do you worship on Sunday morning? Yeah. If you clap during songs, clap. If you lift your hands, and just like what Steve is saying, this is a perfect time. I know I've had hundreds of conversations with people through the years that say, man, I just wish I'd love to raise my hands during worship, and I'm just so nervous what people would think. Well, not anymore. I mean, you're in your living room. Nobody's watching you, right. And so lift your hands.
Yeah.
Fall to your knees.
Yeah.
Do worship the way you've always wanted to worship. This is a great opportunity for you to pour out your heart to the Lord like you've never done before. And so what we did this past Sunday is we're standing up during our music. And one of the things, because before we had been just sitting there, just sitting and singing along. But by the time the sermon rolled around, Buddy's preaching for 30 minutes and I can't keep my kids awake. you know, because they're just like, they're just, by then they've spent 20 minutes just, you know, just sitting there. And so we stood during worship. So if you normally stand during worship, do that. If you normally take notes during the sermon, do that. Do the things that you would normally do. Because I think trying to keep it as close as possible. And I felt like it worked really well for our family this last week, because by the end, I looked around to my family, and I've got some worshipers in my family.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm looking around, I look over there and I see Dylan, his hands are raised and his eyes are closed. I mean, we're sitting in our living room, man, you know, but worship was happening in our living room, just like it does in a worship center on a Sunday morning. And so that to me just really did something to my heart. So I would tell people, approach it like you normally would, you know, spend some time. You know, if your live stream starts at 10, don't wake up at 9:50. You know, get up, prepare your heart and prepare your mind for worship, because honestly, being intentional right now as you worship from home, in order to be intentional, you got to be intentional. You've got to put the time into it. And it might even take a little bit more effort from us, because it's easy to show up on a Sunday morning and get into a worship center or an auditorium. And before you know it, you find yourself worshiping, you know, because you're caught up in the moment. Well, when you're at home, it's going to take a little bit more effort. And so put some time into it. And I just watching my own family and just trying to, okay, how can we get our family engaged a little bit better in worship? Because we don't want it to seem like we're on Netflix watching a movie, you know, because we're not. This is our worship experience, you know, with our family. And, you know, and I spend a lot of time, you know, we pray every week before we do our recording, that as odd as it is, we shoot our video on a Wednesday night, as odd as it is, I always pray, or Buddy, whoever leads the prayer before we do our shoot, that somehow through the power of the Holy Spirit, that God would take this and make us all over Montgomery feel as one when it plays on Sunday morning. You know, God would make us feel connected like never before. And I believe he's doing that. And so, but it just takes being intentional, approaching it like you would worship the way you do normally would, or man, do those things that you've never felt comfortable doing in front of other people. Because I think maybe during this season, you get comfortable with lifting your hands or worshiping a certain way to where you don't want to go back. And you go, when we do, I mean, you don't want to go back to the old way of worshiping. And so when it comes back to where we're all together again, that might transform you to be more expressive worshiper like you've always wanted to be. So those are just my thoughts and the way I've tried to approach this in my family, and what I would recommend to others to do in their own families.
Well, and in all honesty, we've gotten comfortable with a lot of things we weren't comfortable with before. We've gotten comfortable without getting our hair done. We've got comfortable. Some folks, maybe not any of you guys, of course, but some folks have gotten comfortable without showering. You know, we've gotten comfortable with, I mean, if you've been living at home with your family for this period of time, you are out of ways to embarrass yourself. And so, like, one of the thoughts that we try to encourage our folks with is look, you know, I recognize that sometimes there's a lot of self-consciousness people have with singing, but they're at home with their families that have seen them and heard them sing in the car, in the shower. You know, you are past the point of embarrassing yourself. Now let them hear you embarrass yourself worshiping from the depths of your heart. You know, that's kind of one of the things we've pushed toward our folks. Steve, what about you?
It's funny. As Jeremy was talking, I'm like, man, does he have my notes? Point one: be intentional about the time and space you are worshiping in.
Yeah.
I mean, he is spot on.
Yeah.
You are the church. You are joining your brothers and sisters in worship to God.
Yeah.
So make sure and remind yourself of that, and be intentional about your space and your time. Because I'm the worship minister, and this is fun. This will be kind of behind the scenes for some people watching this. On a Sunday morning, I have always we have streamed one of our services now for a while, and but I have always had to go back, and this is just part of my own personal the way that I do things, and watch the sermon. Because when I'm with everybody on a Sunday, part of my responsibility as a worship leader is coordinating everything that's going on. And so I'm working with Don, whether there's going to be an interview or something that he's going to do that's going on. And so I'm always, I've always been communicating with my praise team, hey, this is when we're going to get up, or there's going to be a special song here, or with the band, we're going to do this or whatever. And so let's be ready. And so I am concentrating on those things on Sunday that I have to go listen to God's word be preached later on. You know what I mean? Because I'm always, if something's going on in where I've had to coordinate, I've always been worried about that. And so this has been different for me. But when you're sitting at home and it's time for church, make sure you have your Bible. Make sure you're somewhere where you can sit down and write down what the preacher is saying. And for that matter, even more, you can be conscious of, especially prayers. When there's a prayer, we have intercessory prayer in our worship service where we have our shepherds kind of go through. But be in a place where you can write that down. For Easter, Brishan and those guys in Highland, they had their members talk about what Easter means. Right. And so now go back, right? If you get a chance, and let's say I'm the worship minister at Highland, go watch that service again, see your brothers and sisters, hear what Easter means to them, write that down and add that into your devotional. That's, you know what I mean? Just different things like that. If you are alone, right, and this is one of the things we need to think about. Okay, so if you're a worship minister or a worshiper at home, see if your live stream, something like that, make plans ahead of time to do it with somebody, right? In other words, even if, for some of us, maybe you have 2 devices, right? And so let's say you're going to watch the live stream on your tablet, be texting, right? Maybe not during the singing, but try to engage. And I say this because a lot of our family units are single family units, single person family units. You know what I mean? So if you see if there's some type of a way during the live stream you can connect. Some of our members are using their technology, and they're worshiping 4 or 5 families at a time through technology over 3 and 4 time zones. Yeah. Right. Wow. So some of the things that you could do is try to do that. And then also, and this, I don't think this goes against, I really love what Jeremy and those guys were doing for this might be the case for all of us. I'm not for sure. I'm not as sure about Georgia and Dagan as I am about Jeremy's boys, but I already know them boys. Man, it has been a blessing for me. It does not matter whether it's the acapella portion or the band. When the music comes on, especially Judah and Josiah, they be trying to blow their throats out. They be singing at the top of their lungs. And so we have to crank the TV. I mean, it's good, but and so do that. You know what I mean? Embrace your environment. If it's you, turn your volume up, right? And lead at church. We can control all of that, right? The volume is a place where praise team can be heard and people can sing with one another, and you can hear your brothers and sisters. Well, this environment is different, right? So you gotta embrace that. If you have a great imagination, you can imagine other people singing with you. But if you don't, sing with the worship leader.
Mm.
Just
Mm.
you, right with these two guys here. And there's a couple songs that they were doing and right before. And so I did that in preparation for our time together, Grant. I
Yeah.
grabbed me a couple songs from Highland, and I grabbed me a couple songs from Landmark that I know, and I just sang with them. I'm serious as a heart. I mean, they've got the teams there. Embrace your environment, you know what I mean? And sing right along with those guys. God teaches valuable lessons in the different.
Yeah.
So there's some things that it's different right now. But there's some things we can learn in doing that, for sure.
Well, and I've really appreciated, Steve, some of the videos you put out with you and your boys and hearing them sing behind you. And what you said about them does not surprise me at all. I'd be shocked if they weren't trying to blow their throats out while they're worshiping together. So that's great. Brishan, why don't you close us out with this question?
Well, man, really, I'm with Steve saying that, Jeremy, you hit on almost all that I could think of, because it's intentionality is the way that leads to the outcome we want, and you have to be intentional. But so I don't feel like I have to add that much. I did think of two things. Just because we're relaxed and we have sweatpants on doesn't mean there can't be reverence.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean just because it's less formal, we're in our home, doesn't mean that's not holy space. And I felt those things Sunday morning in a way maybe that I never had before, because of what Jeremy said earlier too. And Steve just talked about it with his boys. I was able to sit with my family and take communion together. That never happens. It's never happened in my kids' lives, and they're both teenagers. And so when one of them prayed during the communion, I'm about to lose my mind I want to just be weeping, but my family often laughs at me because I do that a lot. But I mean, this Sunday morning, especially Easter, it hit me how much I miss being at the building with the people whom I love most. I mean, it's like taking away something that you love to do. If you're a coach, if you're this, say you're never going to do that again, but you're sitting there watching yourself, it's different. So for me, remember those spaces. Just because we're relaxed, we still are worshiping the God of the universe in a space where we should feel more comfortable than we do anywhere else, just like Jeremy said.
Yeah.
And informal doesn't mean that the Holy Spirit, less formal does not mean that the Holy Spirit doesn't live there, because I think he does, and it is there and it's present. And it's a time where, man, I just think the Lord lives there and wants you to respond. And the last thing I'll say too, it's the same thing I say when we're together in a building, is that in order to make that time the best time that it can be, you have to be spending time with the Lord during the week.
Yeah.
Because if you think is going to fill your cup, you're absolutely wrong. Because the preacher ain't going to preach enough and the songs ain't going to be good enough if you are not spending time with the Lord during the week. And right now, especially with the time that we have, pick some books, pick some songs, pick some worship, get on your phone, like Steve said, and watch other people's, streams and this, or just spend time with the Lord in nature or somewhere else. But if you're not building up to that time on Sunday, it will always fall short.
Yeah.
Because you have to be spending time with the Lord outside of that. So, Sunday mornings are important, but without the rest of the week in living that lifestyle of worship that we all know is part of our lives, it's never going to fill your cup like it should. So,
hey, Grant.
Yeah.
Just briefly, right quick. So at least for us in Georgia, this past Sunday was the 5th Sunday that we have been. So our first one was the 15th when we started, when we weren't together. if you can, and that's been over 30 days. So try, I think this is also, and build some different habits. Hatchers have a habit of loving well. I'm being serious. Okay, and I'm talking about what I know, because I know Brishan's parents and extended family. And what I mean is just, he's not on social media a ton, and that's cool. I totally respect that and totally understand that. But their social media says, right on this very surface level, which there still has to be something to that, how much they love each other. And I'm talking about just those guys, he and his siblings and his parents. And so see if you can learn new habits of what it means to love those who are close to you. Okay. People that heard Jeremy say, hey, we have a Bible study every week. If they watch his social media, then they know that he takes the boys and they have Friday Bible study or something like that, breakfast or something like that during the school year. But he got that from Paul and Sarah. Jeremy did. I mean, he don't know any better, right? You understand what I'm saying? And so he's gonna go to his grave doing that stuff. And I say that not trying to be funny, but I'm
Sarah's parents.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm sorry.
I got to follow Sarah too.
Like everybody knows. Yeah. Well, I only said that for our purposes. Otherwise, it's brother and sister or Mr. and Mrs. Swindle. I won't be trying to, trust me, I'll never say that to his face. You know that. But my thing is he was taught that. And so if you don't have a habit of, our family, and I know none of us say this, we're not trying to say it to flaunt it, but Brishan is absolutely right. We worship every day, right? When this thing hit, after about a week and a half, and to each his own, right? I went to the church, I grabbed one of our keyboards. I have a keyboard at home, but that wasn't gonna cut it. I went and got a nice one, brought it home. And I think we put one thing up on social media, but we do that every day. It's not about putting it up on social media. It's about what we do. Part of my ritual, I'm the same as Swindle. I got up at 5:45, came into my office, and then love him like I do. I blasted. Nobody's here but me and Don. And so there's a song called Love Him Like I Do that I would blast from my speakers and to get ready to leave. And so now that you're at home, the same thing. Breakfast is already ready to go. And we use, I think all three of us do, I'm not for sure. I don't know about Highland, but we use a service where we pre-record. Our services are pre-recorded and they're put together. And then at 10 o'clock, our entire church can engage in a live stream where we can have a chat room and everybody can watch the service together. And so that is one of the things with the technology that we've been able to do to kind of help us connect. But our Bible study is afterwards, right? But we keep worshiping after. We have in the Maxwell home, we go downstairs and we keep going with our worship. But just these different things can help, man.
I want to go back and mention a few things that all of you said that really popped off the top for me. Steve, you mentioned following these other worship services like we watch Netflix or Amazon Prime, and I don't want to miss that, because these things are available all week. And think about all the shows that you've been streaming. I'm not going to start naming them. We did that at the beginning. I don't want to do that now. But we know the shows right now that are popping off for everybody. And think about how many of those that you've watched every day or through the week. What if you made it part of your ritual at home to watch one of those worship services and you treated it like Netflix? They're all available. It's not like they're on there and then they're gone. Another thing that several of you guys touched on was intentionality. And to me, I think, and Brishan mentioned, just because you're in your pajamas or you're in your sweatpants, that doesn't mean that it can't be a sacred space. But what I would add to that is, if you notice yourself, because of maybe your dress, maybe something else, not coming to worship the way that you should, maybe put on some different clothes. You know what I'm saying? maybe get up a little bit earlier. Maybe call some of your folks before you get started. Do some of those routine things that you normally do to go to worship. And then finally, I think what I want to kind of point out too, and this is back to something that Jeremy said about this gives you a chance to do some things at home that maybe you've been afraid to do at church. And I want to point out, I agree with him. Let's not lose that when we come back, but also take a second to slow down and recognize that we're turning our homes into worship spaces in a way they haven't been turned into worship spaces in a long time. We're sanctifying our homes right now. We're inviting the Holy Spirit into our homes on a week-to-week basis, and I don't want us to miss the power in that. So last thing, and we'll do this the way that we started with Steve and then Brishan and then Jeremy. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for the time that you've given me today. I think this is really good material, and I appreciate your hearts. So we'll start with Steve and just let you say goodbye. And if there's a sentence or a final word that you want to leave folks with, you can say that too.
Thank you to you, Grant, I think, for putting this together. The four of us are family. I know your church family there in Senatobia will be watching that. And as they heard me just make that statement, let me remind them, especially since they'll probably be the primary audience, that I'm a part of Senatobia, that church family there too. Yeah. Love you guys. Thank you so much for this time. There are many of you there at Senatobia that have wisdom and some things that could help my family and me at this time. And so now we have the time. So for those of you, you know how to get in contact with me or whatever, then let's do that. Let's set up a FaceTime or something like that where we can just tell each other how much we love each other. And I think that is important. Love you guys in Senatobia and anybody else that's watching this. Thanks, Grant, for having me.
Thank you, Steve. Brishan? Yeah, you're still muted, Brishan.
Unmute him.
Yeah.
Unmute. There we go. See, I thought I had made it through the whole thing without doing something like that.
I should have exercised my authority.
You should have. No, I'm so thankful for this time, man. Just getting to see your guys' faces and to be able to talk about these things that we love so much, and that I think, just like we've mentioned in this time, is making a world of difference, a huge difference. And not because we're doing it, but because the Lord is doing what he does through his people all over this planet. Because social media, technology, being able to view these things is so important. But we are seeing that is being put in its place because we are all missing being together in a room. Yeah. And so just because we have all these ways to keep us connected does not mean the depth is there that we need. You know what I'm saying? I think it is. I think we're producing it and we're getting it and we're seeing it. But remember what is the most important thing, and that is being together as the body, as the family of God, and being able to touch one another and embrace one another and lift each other's arms up when we need to do that. And it makes me think about Psalm 136, which I love to use as a responsive reading. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. Why? His love endures forever. His love endures forever. His love endures forever. And so, man, thanks for doing this. And appreciate you so much.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Jeremy?
Yeah, I appreciate you putting this together, Grant, and your vision to share something different and unique. You're doing this, being creative. It's like we're talking about, finding new creative ways to interact with your people. And I think this is really cool way for you for a variety of topics, from worship to whatever. I appreciate your vision for wanting to do this for your people, but and including us in this. And I think just during this season, just really step back and see what's really valuable in life.
Mm.
This has shown me, man. I mean, I love sports. I love, it's really, there's a lot of life
Yeah.
outside of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great things. Hold on to this moment, with your family. I think about, how Satan has intended this for evil,
Mm.
but God's made it good.
Yeah.
He's turned this thing around, and that's just the way he does things.
Yeah.
And so I just am encouraged by that in this process. And so anyway, I appreciate you doing this today. It's been really encouraging for me to spend time with see these guys, all of y'all's faces, and just so grateful for all of you.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for your time and your expertise, and most importantly for your hearts. I just really appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys that listened in, and look forward. We're going to try to keep doing something like this weekly. Have a good day. God bless.